Hello and welcome to the Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Today we'll be discussing one of the most iconic weapons of the Warhammer 40k universe and the weapon of the Imperial Guard. It is the one that has the greatest reputation, is one that is feared by our enemies. It can kill anything from the lowliest grot all the way up to monstrous creatures such as Tyrannid Carnifexes, Hive Tyrants and Tau Riptides. I'm of course speaking of the righteous Lasgun, the venerable Lasgun, the classic Lasgun. This weapon has been with the Imperial Guard since they were first introduced in 2nd edition. Its general role has not changed in all those years. I think Warhammer 40k has been going on for 30-40 years now. It's been going on for a long time. This weapon has not changed one bit. It has stood the test of time. The Lasgun has affectionately been called the AK-47 of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. It does a job, it does it well, it doesn't change. But what is the Lasgun? That's important, we're going to discuss that. How do we use it in the Imperial Guard? We're going to talk about that as well. There's a lot of things to talk about with this weapon. Most importantly, how does it function in 6th and 7th edition? The big changes in the last few years. And is it still good? It has a reputation for being fearsome, but is it actually good? So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So what is the Lasgun? The Lasgun is the Imperial Guard's standard issue rifle. It is the equivalent of the Space Marine bolter in terms of commonness in their respective armies. The Lasgun is a range 24-inch, strength 3 AP- rapid fire weapon, and it on its own is not particularly impressive. However, they can be fielded in such large numbers, such crazy amounts, that they can become the deadliest weapon in your arsenal. And I'm not exaggerating that. They are that good. They are that good, or they used to be that good, but they may, things have changed. We're going to have to look at how effective they are these days. But like I said, it's range 24 inches, strength 3, AP- rapid fire. So in the current rules set, it's always going to be getting one shot at 24-inch range, and at 12-inch range, it gets 2 shots. The units that get this, like I said, pretty much everyone: Imperial Guard squads, conscripts, platoon command squads. Interestingly, your heavy weapon squads, they get them too. In fact, if you actually look, you have 6 guys with Lasguns. They don't replace their weapons, which means you can use if your heavy weapon squad's got some mortars and you don't want to fire danger close, there's a unit in front of them, you can switch to your Lasguns. Don't forget that. Special weapon squads have got them. It's just everyone's got it. It's a fantastic little gun. There's some strapped to the side of the Chimera. So obviously it's primarily an anti-infantry weapon, being strength 3. It's going to struggle to damage vehicles, but there are ways where it can actually do that. So how do we use it? How do we make the greatest use of the Lasgun? Well, mass numbers. Individually, the Lasgun, as I've said, is unimpressive, but in huge numbers, like we can field, it becomes powerful. You've heard me talk about in several of the videos the ability for a big blob of conscripts, 40, 50 conscripts, to down a Riptide. That's doable. It's not even that hard for us to achieve. The key thing with the Lasgun is it's almost like a miniature representation of the Guard as a whole. Individually it's weak, but fielded in numbers it's powerful, and backed up by orders and psychic powers, it is powerful, and it can synergize well with many other weapons in our army. It is truly universal. So how do we make the best use of them? Number one, well, they've got to be taken in they're most useful in blob squads. So you'll often find that you'll have a blob of 30 or 40 regular guardsmen, and 6 out of every 10 of them will be fielding Lasguns. So in a blob of 30, you'll have 18. That's not really enough. In a blob of 40 or 24, that sounds better. So you do need to have large blobs in order to take advantage of this weapon. Conscripts is less of an issue because obviously every conscript has a Lasgun. So how do we buff this weapon? Because obviously strength 3 AP dash is not great. Number one way of buffing it is getting even more shots out of it. The way we do this in the simplest way of doing this is using the order first rank fire, second rank fire. Sorry, that is a very basic order. It can be issued by platoon command squads and company command squads, and it simply just gives you +1 Lasgun shot, which means a blob of 50 conscripts at close range will be putting out 150 shots. That's a lot. 50 conscripts, 50 shots times 3. Boom, 150 shots. That's tasty. So that's how, you can immediately see that's a lot of shots. The Lasgun is that's what I'm trying to get across to you. The Lasgun gains its reputation not by being an individually powerful weapon like the las cannon or the grav cannon. It gains its reputation for being powerful because the enemy gets drowned in shots. There are no other armies out there. Even orcs struggle to have one squad pump out 150 shots. For cheap, 50 conscripts, 150 points, not expensive. Think of it this way. If you're on close range with first rank fire, second rank fire, you've got 50 conscripts, you're paying 1 point per shot, aren't you? That's not bad. So that's where the Lasgun gets its reputation from. Because back in the days of sort of 4th and 5th edition when Terminators were really powerful and units like Terminators, it was a case of, you can pay 15 points for a plasma gun, which will guarantee to kill 1 Terminator. But imagine if instead, for basically no points, because the Lasguns came for free on everything, you had 150 Lasgun shots. That kills a whole squad of Terminators. And that was the premise behind it. The premise behind it is your enemy can only make so many saves. That's the traditional reputation of the Lasgun. Your enemy can only make so many saves. But is that the case still? I'm hinting at this. Is that still the case? Moving on. So we've got a way of pumping out more shots from these bad boys, and pumping out more shots is the best thing about them. How you can also buff them by making sure your shots hit more often. Thanks to us being in the day and age of psychic powers, the addition of psychic powers, prescience is a must-have on all your units. And it's easy to get your hands on it. We have our own access to fairly cheap psychers, not the cheapest, but we have the ability to pump out plenty of psychers ourselves. Allying in formations such as the Librarius Conclave or the Psychic Division only gives us more access to these psychic powers that we need. So imagine if you've got 150 Lasgun shots and suddenly you're re-rolling all your misses. That's pretty powerful. Combine that with orders, where maybe you won't get as many shots, but you can make the shots that do hit count by having bring it down on a squad. So you get to reroll your hits with prescience, reroll your wounds with bring it down against monstrous creatures. That's pretty powerful. Or you can ignore cover. It can be really annoying when you're facing a unit that's got a 2+ cover save. But suddenly, it's not got a 2+ cover save. Maybe it's down to like a 4+ armor save or 5+. Lasguns will shred those units. So that's really good. So Lasguns are really universal, but a lot of the time people mistake it. They can be turned into anti-tank weapons in a pinch. And I've recently started doing this because I've been using a lot more psychic powers. The psychic power Misfortune allows your Lasguns to have rending. And what that means is you can damage any armor that's up to armor 12. That's pretty good. You can damage gargantuan monstrous creatures with rending. Any roll of a 6 on a rending, that's an automatic AP2 wound. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Imagine you've got a big fucking Wraith Night in front of you. Normally, Lasguns wouldn't be able to hurt it. Misfortune! Suddenly, that blob of conscript turns around. Oh, the conscripts have got prescience, and they've got bring it down, and the Wraith Knight is being rendered against, so it won't get its armor save. It'll get feel no pain, and a 5-up invuln. So essentially, have a 4-up save. So let's just take a look at this. 50 conscripts. That's 150 shots. 50 hit. Okay. Reroll Sancta Prescience. Oh look. Another about 30. Another 30, 40 wound. Another 30 hits, we'll say. There you go. You're looking at 80 hits, roughly. And then you get to roll to wound. 80 hits, you need 6s. Well, you're going to get 10 minimum, plus about another 3 or 4, so 14 wounds. Oh look, rerolls again. That comes to about 25 wounds. I may be math hammering badly here, but about 25 wounds roughly. That's a dead Wraith Knight. 150 hits, this works out. 150 hits, 150 shots, 50 hits initially, roll the 100 again, the 100 remaining misses again, comes to about 30. That brings it to 80 hits. 1 in 6 of those will wound, so that gives you 10. But then you've got another 10 for 60, but then you've got another 20 on top of that, which gives you another, what, 3? So 13. So what you're looking at, 50, 60, 7 more chances to wound, another 10. Roughly 20 to 25 wounds on a Wraith Knight. Holy balls. That's not bad. Statistically, that's the same against Riptides as well, because you're still wounding them on 6s. Not shabby. What if you're facing armour? Oh, everyone goes on about how difficult it is to beat Gladius. Not if you've got a bunch of rending Lasguns. Spam out Misfortune on every unit you can. Lasgun them down. It's what I'm trying to display here is with the proper support, with the proper synergy with other units, the Lasgun can take on, in theory, any army out there. There's a reason why we get so many of them. There's a reason why Foot Guard, in my opinion, is the most powerful type of guard out there. It's thanks to the Lasgun. So we've looked at what the Lasgun is. We've looked at ways of making it effective. But now we have to be fair and balanced. We have to look at its disadvantages. We have to look at the fact that does it still work in 7th edition? Is its reputation still founded? The issue with the Lasgun is its strength 3. Now I know we've talked about ways of getting around that with Misfortune. But what if you don't have Misfortune? What if you're facing down an army that Bring It Down won't help you against? For example, Space Marine Bikers, Wolfstar. At the moment, Ravenwing are all the rage. Anything like that. Mass armor. You'll struggle. The Lasgun is powerful, but the fact it's only strength 3 means the majority of the time, thanks to the way power creepers spread, you're going to be wounding things on 6s. The majority of the time, wounding on 6s. You cannot wound anything strength 7 or higher. Without help, you cannot bring down a Wraith Knight. The fact, and also what you've got to try and remember is, if you're trying to out-psychic the Eldar, you might struggle versus the Wraith Knight. So, problem number 1 with the Lasgun. It's low strength. There's a reason why it can be fielded in such high numbers, because it needs to be. The Lasgun becomes a burden when you don't take enough of them. When you're running armies like loads of veterans and stuff, suddenly those Lasguns become an issue. If you're running 6 squads of veterans in Chimeras rolling all over the place, that's only 36 Lasguns in your whole army. That ain't enough. You know, if you're running, that's when they become a burden. They need to be taken en masse for them to be effective. So the low strength is an issue. The change in the meta is an issue. The change in the rule set is an issue. Before, the Lasguns earned their reputation by being able to kill anything with a 2-up save. They used to be the go-to weapon in the Guard army, honestly. for shredding Terminators and the like, because your opponent can only make so many 2-up saves. This, unfortunately, is no longer still true. Thanks to 7th edition, with the advent of allies and the crazy psychic phase that we have, it is possible to have a unit with a 2+ rerollable invuln save. That means you have to do a hell of a lot of damage. It's hundreds. To get a single wound through, you have to do hundreds of wounds. Most units that are running that kind of shit, you're winning on 6s. On top of that, if you're facing an invisible Death Star, you've got a hit on 6s, got a wound on 6s, then they have a 2+ save followed by a 2+ save. It's over. I don't know the exact maths, but I believe it is over 1,000 wounds that you must do to 1,000 shots that you must fire to do an actual wound, a single wound. This is the issue with the Lasgun. It is now possible, thanks to the way Warhammer 40k is, or what Warhammer 40k has become. It is now possible for your opponent to be immune to mass firepower, to be immune to firepower. You know, it is possible. In my opinion, there's only 2 ways to beat an invisible Death Star. You slow it down, or you out invisible Death Star it, but you will not shoot it to death. I have seen invisible Death Stars go through massed Tau gun lines without taking a casualty. I have seen that. Even with all their marker lights, I have seen it happen. You know, it's crazy. And if the Tau can't do it, then sure as hell the Imperial Guard with mass Lasguns are going to struggle. So they're the 2 main flaws. There are others, but they're the 2 main ones. 1, you're going to struggle to do any damage. 2, against some lists, you're going to struggle to do damage. And 2, some lists are just immune to it. And when a list becomes immune to your main source of damage, you're going to struggle. But that's it, really. The Lasgun is such a fun weapon to use. It's amazing. The look on your face when you tell your opponent, I'm going to be firing 75 shots. I can't physically hold all these dice at once. Could you put some of these dice in my hand for me? That's called trolling. And I do it every tournament. My opponent's like, you want me to put dice in your hands? Yeah, I can't physically pick them all up at once. I have too many dice. And against any conventional army, anyone that isn't invisible, you're going to do some good damage. You're going to do some really, really, really good damage. Once you close the gap, once you get to the 24-inch range with your Lasguns, you're going to start laying on the hurt. I played a game against Tau recently, and I was struggling. He was pouring the firepower into me as they do. And then suddenly I got within 24-inch range. And his Fire Warriors melted. His Kroot melted. It was a soft-ish list. His optimized Stealth Cadre, they started struggling. The Riptide started taking wounds. You know, it was when I managed to close that gap. Thank God I had enough conscripts, is all I can say. The conscripts did absorb a lot of damage, and then the regular guardsmen were able to make it to that 24-inch range bracket, make it to that 12-inch range bracket. That's when the hurt started laying on. And that was a good game. You know, so it's key to have a lot of Lasguns as a guard player. So how does it work with the rest of your army though? So the Lasguns will allow you to pour on massive amounts of firepower. It's a fairly universal weapon because normally it would be relegated to pure anti-infantry, but because they can be fielded in such mass numbers, they can be almost anything. They can kill almost anything. And there's nothing more satisfying than seeing your opponent's beloved Riptide get absolutely murdered by a big blob of conscripts. Big blob of old men, young boys, injured guys, you know, where people who were just taken off the streets and given a rifle and pointed in the general direction of the front line. There's nothing better as a guard player than Lasgunning something to death. So, yeah, in summary, I think the Lasgun is a fantastic weapon. I love it. It's why I play guard. If there was no Lasgun, I probably wouldn't play guard. I know that sounds crazy, but it has some disadvantages you have to be aware of. It's no longer, I don't think it fully deserves the reputation that it enjoys, because there are ways for your opponent to just completely invalidate it. One thing I would also say is the Lasgun's good, but it's relatively short ranged. It can do damage at 24-inch range, but really you want to get to that 12-inch range bracket where you're going to be pouring it on. So you need some long range Daka to back it up. You know, you can't just take a full army of Lasguns and expect to win. It won't work. You know, you need your tanks to provide some serious long range firepower, and you need las cannons and special weapons to back it up. Majority of the time, the Lasgun will be an anti-infantry weapon, but it can do other stuff. So it's a fairly, I don't know, fairly shortish video. You know, I'm not going on, and it's a fairly harmless video. I mean, anyone who collects Imperial Guard knows about the Lasgun, but for those of you who only consider veterans to be worthwhile, take a look at it. Take a look at mass infantry. You know, you might think it's impressive. You know, if your regular opponent fields Terminators, you might think it's impressive. Oh, I can take a squad of veterans with 3 plasma guns in a Chimera. That does plenty. That can kill 3 Terminators at range. Oh, good. 3 Terminators, 24-inch range. What about 50 conscripts led by a commissar? Roughly cost the same as a tooled out veteran squad in a Chimera. I bet those 50 conscripts can kill an entire squad of Terminators in one round of combat. And they're a walking age defense line. And their objective secured and can take, I know veterans are, but 50 conscripts with Lasguns, they can sit on an objective and they will stay there till the last man. Things to consider. Things to consider. If you've not fielded mass Lasguns in the past, I reckon you should try it out. I reckon you'll be pleasantly surprised what the humble Lasgun can do. Because I tell you what, my opponents are often very surprised at what I do with my humble Lasguns. They do not expect it. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you've got any suggestions for other videos, please let me know. Thank you for watching. If you've got any of your own thoughts on Lasguns, leave a comment. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.